Coming up, we share some things we wish we knew, some tricks we used to make our experience more enjoyable, a bit about the area, and of course the stunning scenery. There are also more details, maps, and other info linked below in the notes. If you enjoy or find this useful, we hope you will consider liking and subscribing. The Cordillera Huayhaush is a place of pristine beauty, if not pristine trails. You are unlikely to ever camp alone, but we often found stretches of solitude between camps, and appreciated that the camp fees go directly to supporting local communities. The weather is ever-changing, and you are likely to experience all 4 seasons, sometimes all on the same day. If you are a fair-weather hiker, this may not be the trip for you, but if you have a sense of adventure, the physical stamina, and time to acclimate to the altitude, this place is magical. This was our first wild mammal visitor of the trip, a culpio. These handsome animals are often called Andean fox and look like a large red fox, but they aren't in the fox family. Our visitor came by to check out our lunch and was skittish but very bold. It's not hard to imagine people gaining their trust, and it seems that people in Chile did just that and domesticated some culpio into canine companions hundreds of years ago. As we ended our first day of hiking, our first camp greeted us with a hint of sunshine and a splendid break in the clouds around the glaciated peaks over the tent city. This may look like a nice grassy field, but we quickly found that there was a boggy section between us and the bathroom, and this seemed to be a common feature in many of the camps. We were very glad to have our waterproof socks. In the evenings, we like to give our feet a break by trading our hiking boots for sandals with waterproof socks over liner socks to keep our feet warm and dry. We list the distance and elevation that our devices tracked for each day, but this is just what we did. There are countless ways to do this trip, and many of the trails change from year to year. This is one of many days where our guide gave us options, and even those options had options. Once we got to the first viewpoint, we had the choice of heading down to camp the easy way or continuing on to another viewpoint. Then from that viewpoint, we could go down to camp or continue on a less traveled narrow trail to another viewpoint with an even harder descent. The weather held out, so we went for it, and we were not disappointed, but the path down would be treacherous if it was wet. Our second camp was one of our favorites, for both the view and the atmosphere. It was split into sections, and the community required the donkeys to stay in their own area, making it cleaner and calmer than many of the camps. You may think of camping as being quiet, but you may want to consider earplugs for this trip. Along with the sound of other people, there are often donkey brays, dogs fighting, avalanches, and plenty of other bumps in the night. Today, most of the day we're on a donkey-free trail, but unlike many of the other trails, this one was mostly free of cows and sheep too. It was nice not to have to watch your feet to avoid stepping in a cow pie or donkey droppings, but it was also a sign of the terrain that was coming. Before the going got tough, we got to experience this magical canyon and its chain of picturesque lakes. This one had rings of snow in the water, signs of recent avalanche, and as we walked, we witnessed several more. The mountains look so close, but the avalanches would remind you of just how small you are, because you would hear them first, and then see them surging down, sometimes taking a full minute to reach the bottom, snow and ice rushing like water. The Lagunas served as both a magnificent view and a silent protector, as a buffer between us and the falling torrents, allowing us to safely observe and marvel at the power and chaos of the mountains. We live near the mountains and hike weekly, covering hundreds of miles a year. But the altitude and terrain here are not to be underestimated, and at times pushed our limits. We were very glad to have the assistance of an excellent guide, chef, and donkey drivers to make the experience more comfortable. I'm a naturally fast-paced hiker and am terrible at slowing myself at altitude, but our guide had an amazing steady pacing walk that we called his Zen step, that he would skillfully modulate on the way up the passes to keep us from getting too winded. You've probably noticed the consistently inconsistent weather here. Quality waterproof shoes, rain pants, rain jacket, and gloves are essential here, and something you want to have and test ahead of time. Despite the popularity of trekking, our guide said that quality gear is relatively hard to find and expensive in Peru. You also want to be sure that the rest of your gear is adequately protected. We learned this the hard way the first day. The gear that we sent with the donkey drivers was in our personal duffels instead of the tour company bags, and ours were not waterproof. We feel like meeting other travelers really enriches a trip, and we typically try to do group treks where you are paired with strangers. Being out on the trail for days with no internet or cell phone can inspire some really interesting conversations and deep connection. Of course, there are trade-offs to being in a group. You may have to rush or slow down to match the speed of the group, and sometimes there may be group decisions that you aren't pleased with. In remote areas like this, an illness or injury could impact the plans for the entire group. I often get nervous about being the person who is the slowest or messes things up for everyone in some way. For this trek, we didn't even know how many people would be in our group, but on our first full day in Huaraz, a few days before the trek, we had a serendipitous meeting with them. They were a Canadian couple who grew up in communist-controlled Eastern Europe and had a great sense of humor. We thoroughly enjoyed their stories and first-hand history lessons. Unfortunately, they both got food poisoning right before the trek and were suffering from some of the symptoms. We have both had food poisoning on trips before and were extremely impressed that they were able to do the hike. A couple of days, our companions took alternate routes that bypassed the more difficult mountain passes, and we were very lucky and grateful that our chef was able to act as an assistant guide and split the group so they could take care of themselves and we could still get to experience everything. Our chef and guide both were passionate outdoorsmen, and it was really cool to learn that they love it enough that they make time to do occasional trips on their own when they aren't working with groups. Between our terrible Spanish and our chef's bit of English, we were able to converse a little and try to learn some of his cooking secrets. This viewpoint was the highest elevation of the trek, and it was almost as high as Everest Base Camp. We were getting much more acclimatized to the altitude, but I still felt totally wrecked by the time we made it, and we both felt a little dizzy if we tried to move too fast. Sitting for a few minutes was all it took to recover and feel better, but even moving around the viewpoint felt strangely taxing. The awesome thing about altitude is as long as you only spend a little time up high, you feel great again as soon as you start to descend. We made it back to the top of the pass just in time to witness the other couple's victory dance, celebrating making it on their own without riding the horse. Together, we happily headed down towards the thicker air and a hard-earned lunch. Our chef had a favorite place where we were able to be tucked away from the wind and still enjoy the picturesque view. As always, lunch was amazing, but it seemed extra good today. Almost as if they had planned it this way, an afternoon storm rolled in just as we were finishing up. The fourth camp was pretty as always, and even had a cool waterfall with a backdrop of a mountain. A babbling stream greeted us with a soothing soundscape, but that stream meandered its way through camp, creating a bit of a moat around the bathroom. You had to hop across it at least once, and then climb up a short but steep path, which was a bit troublesome in sandals. Today, we opted for the Santa Rosa Pass, a challenging route, but not the hardest option. We started when it was just barely light out, and nearly beat the sun to the pass. With one group far ahead and another far behind us, we were the only people in sight, and we barely saw anyone else for most of the day. The view was amazing, but the route down required our full attention, and even then it was pushing our limits. The terrain alternated between loose scree, loose rocks, and occasional bare patches with a wicked slope, where it was hard to get a good grip. In some areas, it felt like if we lingered long enough, the trail we were standing on would slide all the way to the bottom, taking us with it. We were very glad when we finally reached some more solid rock. It sure is a beauty, but not for everyone. I'm glad I did it, but I'm honestly not sure I would opt for a round 2. As we made our way down the valley, we caught glimpses of a couple large animals leaping through the rocks and diving out of sight. Then we rounded a corner, and these two were just hanging out, soaking up the sunshine. Maybe it was because they had their burrows so close, but they barely seemed to mind our presence. And it was a bit of a magical moment to be able to make eye contact and share a moment of curiosity with these creatures. These are viscacha, which look like giant chinchillas, but lucky for the viscacha, their warm fur is useless for garments, giving them some level of protection. However, their size makes them a hearty meal. As we were coming down the pass, we spotted what looked like a tiny building perched on the slope of one of the red-tinged mountains. Our guide explained that it was part of a derelict mining exploration venture. The community we were heading towards controls this land and decided not to permit mining to move forward. I couldn't find any specifics on this site, but I did find a story about a nearby venture that went sour. And I wonder if that may have been part of the reason the community decided against this one. The other nearby mining venture was illegally drilling into a glacier, which is forbidden by both the communities and the federal government. The work near and in the glacier contaminated the water downstream, which was the community's water supply for drinking water and irrigation. Water tests revealed lead, cadmium, zinc, and more, all of which are toxic at high levels and can be devastating for an agricultural community. We are very glad the community decided to protect this special place, but imagine it must have been a difficult decision. There are very few young people in most of these communities because they have to go to the cities for opportunities and even education. I wonder who will be left 20 years from now. Another day and another early morning. If you're not a morning person, this may not be the trip for you. I don't think we ever slept past 5:30, and even in the city, most day trips left very early to take advantage of the weather. Like most days, we were quickly passed by the donkey trains. The donkey drivers work hard and have a friendly competition each day to arrive at camp first to secure the prime camp spots. We kept well out of their way whenever they came near because we have had plenty of experience from previous treks, but their spatial awareness does not tend to include their luggage. And if you share that space, you are unlikely to win. If you're lucky, you will just end up in the mud. These animals look like they have hard lives. Most of them do this circuit, get at least a week or two off, and then do it all again. We noticed that at night, one or two of them would have their front legs bound, and we learned that this is to allow them to graze freely, but prevent the lead animal from leaving and leading the whole pack home. Imagine waking up and having all your donkeys gone. Of course, there are many ways to do this trek, and it can be done independently. Backpackers can carry all their own food, gear, and do this on their own, or hire a guide. We saw several people doing this, but it requires enough time to fully acclimate to the altitude, a bit of planning, and a lot of grit. The town we stayed at last night is the main place to resupply on food. We backpack a lot at home, but we wouldn't consider it here. For us, the altitude, rough terrain, temperature swings, and weather are just a bit too much to make backpacking enjoyable. We felt that this is the kind of trip where you really want to be able to enjoy the mountains and the magic of walking through a sudden snow squall, knowing that there will be hot tea and a snack waiting at camp, and a bucket of water to wash up. While this area may be rich in valuable minerals like copper, it often has very little in terms of vegetation. We have so many trees at home, we don't think much of them, and often complain they are blocking the view when we are in the mountains. Here, we miss them. It feels so strange to feel like you could walk a full day and not see a tree. Our guide said that there is only one tree that grows well in the soil at this altitude, and there are government projects to grow them in some areas. One of the big reasons we missed the trees was the unrelenting sun. Sure, it was often cloudy in the afternoons, but the UV rays still got through and are much stronger than normal due to the altitude. We found it difficult not to get burnt. We diligently wore sunglasses, hooded shirts, and big hats, but by the end of the trip, my face was so bad that applying sunscreen hurt. I highly recommend a good face lotion to apply in the evening, and light gloves to protect your hands while you're hiking when it is warm out. So far, we had generally had a view of a couple major peaks at a time. Today's ridge was further from the mountains, and it was like being able to zoom out and take them all in at once. The size of it all was unbelievable. The variety of shapes, textures, and innumerable glaciers. It was stunning and a little bittersweet to feel our time here was coming to an end. 2 dogs had followed us from the beginning. One of them mostly adopted a French group, and this black one, who our companions named Coco, adopted ours. We never fed her, but our companions did, and our chef made sure she got something after every meal. He was with us again for this afternoon for the scenic detour along the ridge. I don't know why she picked us. I would say it was the food that she was following, but she tried to get in our tent with us and chose to follow us instead of our chef on the final day. We are told that some of these camp dogs will start over again with the next group and make infinite loops of this trek. They probably know the trails as well as the guides. The end was finally in sight. We walked down the hill to the sound of a fish seller's persistent refrain of pescado, 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 broadcast on loudspeaker. This trip was truly incredible, and we had a fantastic team supporting us. We have more information in the notes below and on our blog, including tips on what to pack, camp details, and much more. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. There are hiking resources below and information on free ways to help support this channel. The easiest is liking and subscribing. Thank you. Happy exploring.